It's always kind of curious to me why people pick the professions that they do. City and municipal planning and administration is a unique calling, let's put it that way. And I'm just kind of curious about your own journey, and maybe what you've learned along the way.
I kind of stumbled into it. I went to school at University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, psych major, but thinking I was going into medicine, honestly.
Oh,
But when I was in college, a couple things were happening, and I started getting a sense of like service, and I wanted to do more. So I came home, and wasn't sure what I was going to do. I was going to well, maybe I'll go back to PA school. So came home for the summer and kind of stumbled into a program called AmeriCorps through Salisbury University.
yeah.
And then ended up getting recruited to run recreation and parks youth programs. I used to be a camp counselor in college, and they're like, "Hey, opening, you're done with school." And then I kind of moved over. I was like, "Oh, my first job. It's fine. I don't know if we'll be here." Fast forward 5 years, get promoted to recreation superintendent, running all the recreation. Fast forward another 5 years. The city of Salisbury Mayor Jake Day created a deputy city administrator position. Knew I was looking for the next career. He's like, you should come join Team Salisbury. So
Oh, wow.
kind of never ended up that direction, and then became part of, as a deputy, and I've been in that senior leadership for the last 8 years in the
Yeah.
two different capacities. So, but along the whole way, I've always really enjoyed giving back, being part of that person who serves.
So I know Salisbury well enough to know that that's a challenging community. When you look at I think it's one of the top growing communities in the United States per capita, if I'm not wrong. And it's gone through a lot of evolutions. And what has been your takeaways after so many years there?
It is. We are a city on the rise. We were growing regionally, being the core of the county with the university here, the hospital here, within Wycomico County. We had a very visionary leader that brought me on, Mayor Day, who's now in the governor's cabinet. So I think Salisbury, as of now, though there has been growth, is moving in the right direction in terms of trying to get its identity, take that next chapter, that next step. One of the things that I bring it up, we're about 35,000 people right now. And I've said, are we 35 going to 40,000? Are we 35 going to 50,000? Because that really matters on how big we get, what other resources we want, what do we want to do with housing, what do we want to do with industry, recreation and parks, and then what's that relationship look like? So I think that is for us as a community to really kind of think about and what the mayor and council wants to see happen. Now, specifically, I think the shore has been seeing more growth, just in general, and it's happening up in Easton too. Even after the COVID years, this relocation of people from the bigger suburban areas, a lot of the baby boomers who are retiring are getting closer to the beach, closer to the shore, and you're starting to see more of that demographic happen. I think it's a little more happening in Talbot County, a little less in Salisbury. We've actually gotten younger. We're seeing maybe some spillover from Delaware where people are moving into the area, the younger professional, because of the medical field that is growing. The university is expanding, whether it's Salisbury or UMES. We have more universities, and we're trying to keep people here.
I have interviewed the former mayor a couple of times, and the first one was with Salisbury becoming a nationally recognized bicycle community. I don't know if you were part of that era, but it was there's some interesting ideas about how to work with the community and improve quality of life.
I was kind of on the tail end. It had already started, but during my tenure through our transportation division within our infrastructure and development, we got a $14 million grant, federal grant for bikeways infrastructure and pedestrian infrastructure. There has been a push, whether it's through Vision Zero or different other state and federal programs to make communities more walkable, more biker friendly. So to really, get more cars off of the road. And kind of whether it's green or sustainability resources. And I think as a community grows, it's important to think about your transportation networks. You've got to figure out how are people getting from place to place. And if you have walkable communities, which also includes bike infrastructure, people are going to be able to get from place A to B safely. And I think,
the one thing that Easton has been thinking about a lot, and it doesn't look like there's a lot of easy answers, is affordable housing. I was wondering if you had found some answers in Salisbury or other best practices that maybe we could even start looking at here.
if anybody had the silver bullet to solve housing right now, they'd be a lucky person. As I speak with Secretary Day, who runs Department of Housing and Community Development, this is an issue, but something that they're aggressively trying to solve statewide. And I think every community is facing it. When we talk about affordable housing, everyone uses it in different terminologies. There's affordable, restricted income based. There is workforce housing. Some people talk about attainable housing. It's all over the place. And what a lot of people are seeing and what we're starting to talk about is really, looking at the different buckets. There's affordable housing projects that are typically subsidized through a state or a federal program that has these restrictions and who can live there. And there's different programs and different developers who work specifically in that space. Green Street Housing is one of those that work here locally. In Easton, one of the projects is coming online right now. That's an affordable housing projects. The difficult about that is because most of the project is subsidized through the state and federal money. There's only so much money to go around, so that you can only do so many projects so quickly, and that's the problem. It takes a long period of time, but there is movement, and I think if we could get more dollars into that and more opportunities. I think the other part is more of this, what I call attainable housing. It's that starter home. What we're facing is we have a lot of people who have, that salary that is good for a single person or single income source, but without that secondary income in married or spouse or best friend, they can't afford anything. It's just outside that price point of where they're able to. And it's not getting easier because the cost of materials continue to go up. So what was, to build it $100 a square foot is now closing in on $200 a square foot in Salisbury. And then in some of you, the housing market in Easton is even higher than the housing market in Salisbury. So it's even more expensive there. So to kind of jump into the point, I think it's trying to figure out a little bit more differently on what are some of those goals. Not everyone's getting a 5,000 square foot house, but are we thinking about housing differently? And how are you building that into your zoning code? And I know Easton is going through a comp plan, which then also includes some of the zoning things. And where is that balance? How do we look at having both high-end quality housing and affordable housing and everything in between. And there's not necessarily an easy answer, but I think the more you can leverage partnerships, see what the state's coming out with, see what opportunities exist with developers, even if there's some incentives that you can work through, kind of look at housing. You don't look at housing for the next 2 years, but like the next 20 years, the next 40 years. And that's some of the stuff we did in Salisbury where we incentivized some growth. We wanted housing. So Mayor Day had a program. We created a program down in the heart of Salisbury where we said, whether it's waivers and taxes or waivers and permit fees, if you would build now and build big, we were going to incentivize, forego some revenue now to get the longer revenue and the housing that we needed.
And on the other side of the spectrum for these municipalities is just working through process challenges, just filling out forms and getting approvals and all these things that you would think in 2025, there's some things that we can do now that could really streamline some of these things that have held up projects in the past.
Absolutely. And there's a couple things within that. You don't want to tattle on yourself, but we sometimes get stuck right in the old ways. Hey, we've always done it this way. Let's continue to do it this way. Change is change. I like the paper form. I don't like the internet. I don't like the stuff. But I think integrating what the new technology is coming out and the efficiencies of it will help us move things through the process faster. I think a lot of times, and we've been doing it right now, is let's look at our code and what makes sense. Like what rules are in place that no longer need to be there, but you have to be systematic about saying we're doing this. If we change this, we don't have to be a barrier to entry anymore. We can make this faster. What is the reason for that law or that regulation? And if it's no longer necessary, can we move it or can we do it differently? And I think a lot of that, as we talk with the developers, this red tape, we created it and it's maybe not necessary. And maybe it was a safeguard 30 years ago or different council or administration thought, well, maybe we need to do this, but let's evaluate if that's necessary anymore. And it could be as simple as some small checks and balances to just a couple items on a form that you have to fill out. So I think kind of doing an audit of your processes and saying, does this make sense now? But it can't just be me and our engineering team or planning team. It's got to be some of the people on the other end who are pulling those permits or wanting to be those developers. When you talk about being developer friendly, you want people to be able to feel comfortable going through that process. The Secretary Day has always said, he's like, our processes in Maryland have been so cumbersome that people are building in Virginia or Delaware or DC, and we need to be better about that. And I think we need to do that at a local level too.
The other question I wanted to ask is, why Easton for you? We've been doing a lot of coverage of town managers for a variety of reasons, city managers. And boy, it's a competitive market. People can go anywhere they want, I think, with the right qualifications. Why did you think Easton was the place for your next career move?
Great question. I'm from Salisbury. Got a couple kids here. Wife's got a practice here and also works for Tidal Health. I've grown up in Salisbury. I like Salisbury. But as I was looking for the next chapter in my life for personal and professional growth, when I saw Easton was looking for a position that looked very similar to what I was doing here, a vibrant downtown, a city on the rise who wants to continue to move forward. Really enjoyed the messaging and some of the budget comments that were made by Mayor Cook. I really appreciate what the council is wanting to do and them now trying to work more closely aligned. It reminded me a little bit of Salisbury with that, being the county seat of the municipality within Talbot, Easton is. It is a strong form mayor, so I would be working directly with the mayor. So, knowing I wanted to look at the next opportunity for own professional growth, personal growth, and knowing that Easton is right there, that I'm going to, and I've been in Easton. I like the downtown. I like the people, and even the interview process. The people I got to meet, the team I got to meet, I really like it. I think we're going to have a great fit. I've known people who've lived there. I know that they're excited about a lot of the same things that make me want to, help lead that conversation. And even my conversations with Mayor Cook and what she values and what she thinks is important as an elected person, I want to be part of that. It's kind of contagious. So I think it's going to be a great fit for me, and I'm really excited to be able to kind of start serving the people of Easton.